Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the Interrail Eurorail book tag part 2. So this tag was created by Mark over at Book Time with Elvis, and he created this several months ago, and I have had very little time to make tag videos, and I knew that I wanted to do this one. I just didn't get around to it at the time, so I'm going through my backlog now and going through these, going through whatever tags I can when I can. And if you haven't seen Mark's channel, again, it's Book Time with Elvis. You'll find the link down in the description. He's a terrific guy, probably one of the nicest guys on BookTube, so please check out his channel. In the first leg of this tag, he had us going through parts of Western Europe. Now we're on another leg. I think we're kind of going through Spain and some of those areas this time. And they're basically prompts that have to deal with some books, some traveling, some artistic questions. So just kind of great questions, I think, to let people get to know the person who's answering. So without further ado, we can start going through this. And you're gonna have to forgive me right away. I'm not gonna do well with some pronunciation of some of these places. So let's see how this goes. He says, having had your fill of paella, you head off to Lisbon. It is a long route with stops and transfers on the way. Have you read a book that felt like it wasn't ever going to end? I've mostly been fortunate in the books that I've read. One that I could say that felt like that to me, though, was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I loathed that book and that experience, and it is a big book. So, yeah, shouldn't have been that long, but it felt even longer than it was. Finally, after much travel, you arrive in Lisbon, a beautiful city that had large parts of the city destroyed in the great earthquake of 1755. Have you ever experienced an earthquake, tornado, hurricane, or some such force of nature? I have experienced, well, we have had like little earthquakes around us, nothing major. We get very small ones in the Northeast, and they're not very frequent at all. Northeast United States. I remember when I was a kid, we had a hurricane come through. And I remember during the hurricane, we were making shrinky dinks in the oven. Those are like these little plastic stand-up pieces that when you bake them, they get like smaller and harder, I think, and they're like, it's like a toy that a kid could make inside an oven. I was pretty young. But I remember when the eye of the storm was passing over us, everybody went outside to go look, and then, of course, went back in when the storm proceeded. But we haven't had a hurricane like that ever since then, and I was young. I was, young elementary schooler at that time. Lisbon was the hometown of Fernando Pessoa. Have you read anything by him? I have not. Interestingly, Pessoa published just 4 books in his lifetime, and 3 of them were in English. He also translated books on the Scarlett Letter by Hawthorne and poems by Poe into Portuguese. Well, he had some good taste in American literature. Do you read many translated works, and what are some of your favorites? I don't know if I say read many translated works, but I do read some. Some of the most recent ones that I enjoyed, I haven't enjoyed every single one, but one of the ones I really enjoyed was Perfume, The Story of a Murderer by Patrick Zuskind, originally written in German. And earlier in the year, I read Musashi, the Japanese historical novel by Eiji Yoshikawa. And I enjoyed that one as well. So yes, I do like translated works. I just don't get to them all that often. Excuse me. Pessoa was fond of an odd drink or 10. You head up to the city of Porto, famous for, among other things, port, a drink of fortified wine. Do you have a favorite tipple? Now and again. It's a very, very English slang term, tipple. If you do not drink alcohol, then what is your favorite thirst-quenching beverage? I do drink alcohol. In fact, I do like port quite a bit, especially tawny port. I like the kind of nuttiness. I don't like it too sweet. But yeah, I usually get a Sandeman's tawny port. That's one of my favorites. I probably drink too much of it when I do get a bottle. Other spirits that I would go to, or not other spirits, but spirits that I would go to would be, I do like brandy, cognac, and sometimes dark rum. I am, wine I like as well, the dry red wine. I don't like sweet wines for the most part, especially like sweet, white wines. But I am mostly a beer drinker. So that usually ends up being, I do like wheat beers, and I like Belgians, like quads. I'm a big fan of porters and stouts, especially like these big roasty stouts with lots of, coffee and chocolate characteristics, certainly. And yeah, that's usually what I end up gravitating towards. Going on, Porto is home to the Livraria Lello. Again, I'm butchering these and I'm sorry. A beautiful bookshop that, unfortunately, due to the tenuous link to the Harry Potter films, has now become a bit of a tourist attraction. Have you got a favorite bookshop or library? Yeah. One of my favorite bookshops in Connecticut is the Book Barn over in Niantic, a huge, sprawling used bookstore that crosses not just several buildings, but several locations. That's a great one. Very kind of whimsical as well and eclectic. Whenever we can, if we're passing through that area, we'll stop in and look around. And we do have a bookstore not too far from me, a little one that nevertheless manages to have a pretty good selection. They keep a nice selection, well stocked, and that's the Hickory Stick Bookshop, I believe is what it's called, over in Washington, Connecticut. Very small little town. The Douro River runs through Porto, and the Old Town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site with its 6 bridges across the river. Have you visited any UNESCO sites? If so, tell us about some of them. Yes, I have. Been to Versailles, I believe, is the Palace and Grounds is a World Heritage Site. We went there, I think it was around 2014 when we went there. And I just remember that was the first time my wife and I went to Europe. And she was convinced that when we went to Versailles, I was going to propose to her. Obviously, we're not engaged yet. And I wasn't thinking that at all. So, I was trying to see if we can get a carriage ride or something like that. It ended up being too expensive. We were too poor of like young college travelers to afford a carriage ride through the grounds of Versailles. But she was convinced that I was going to pop the question, and I was not thinking that at all. Nevertheless, we still had a good time. Even though it started raining towards the end of it, we were soaking wet, but we were still having a great time with that. I've also been to Budapest, the banks of the Danube, and like Buda Hill, the castle up there, and Andrassy Avenue. That's all World Heritage Site. Like big trucks going by, and we spent a lot of time up there. When we were up in Buda Hill, we went to the Hungarian. It was the military museum, which a very interesting experience, that museum, because when I was there, they had a whole floor basically dedicated to World War I, and just a little corner dedicated to World War II, and things like the Arrow Cross and stuff like that. So very interesting. They were kind of looked like they were selectively choosing points of their history to emphasize. But we had gone there with my friend who grew up in Hungary, and my wife she was kind of ahead of us. And we were walking out of the museum. We were going down a couple of streets, so she was like a block ahead of us, sort of like taking pictures. And my friend and I were lagging behind, and this woman walks up to us, and she says, time, what time? And my friend looks at his watch, he tells her time. She's like, no, what time we meet? I am prostitute. And he didn't really know how to respond to that. He's like, no, thank you. And she looked worse for wear. But if my wife had been there, I don't think she would have walked up. But that was just kind of a memorable experience. We didn't expect that. And like, it was a pretty kind of posh area, with expensive real estate up in Buda Hill. But she was just wandering around looking for a John. Been to Rome, of course, the Roman ruins, Vatican City. That's where my wife and I honeymooned. We were just a few minutes walk from the Pantheon, and we loved walking around Rome. I've been to Barcelona, so we've seen some of the works of Gaudi, like the Sagrada Familia. Independence Hall in Philadelphia is a World Heritage Site, so yes, I've been there. Statue of Liberty in New York City, been there. And the other one that I've been to last one is Monticello and University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. Monticello is the home of Thomas Jefferson. which is a really cool experience to go through there. He's a very complicated person in a lot of ways, but somebody who I am certainly in many ways drawn to, and other ways I'm repulsed by. So I find him endlessly fascinating. But he founded University of Virginia, which is the first real kind of public university, I believe, in the U.S., and he designed the central quad area to make it be open, like the opposite of a cloister, so that it would be inviting to the public. And yeah, we walked those grounds and seen some of that as well. And that was great. Continue on. Finding yourself in a particularly devout mood. I don't know about me. And with a lot of time on your hands, you decide to walk the Portuguese Camino de Santiago all the way to Santiago de Compostela, which will take you between 10 to 12 days. If you're not up to it, you can grab a bus there in 3.5 hours. That'll be me. Do you enjoy walking or hiking? What is the longest walk you have done? I do enjoy walking and hiking, certainly. One of the longest hikes we did, we thought it was gonna be a short hike. My wife and I were going along the Appalachian Trail, which is near us, at least a little part of it, on Mother's Day. And we had a map, we didn't have a topographic map, so we didn't know how high and low the terrain was. But we had seen a guy with a backpack, we're like, how long is it to the next, wherever it was that we were trying to go? He's like, half an hour. This guy must have lived on the trail and practically ran it every day. It took us, I think, like 3 hours by the time we finished. It was way steeper and way more climbing than we were expecting it to be. So that short distance ended up being a long time. And, I don't walk a lot in my daily life just because my neighborhood isn't great for walking. But when we travel, I am an endless walker. I find, reservoirs of energy that I didn't know I had, and I will walk all day if I'm traveling and seeing new things. After a bit of R&R and some intense foot bathing in Santiago de Compostela, you embark by train till Bilbao, the de facto capital of the Basque Country. The Basque Country was home to Juan Sebastian Elcano, the man who took over Magellan's circumnavigation of the world after his death. Have you read much nonfiction on discovery and exploration? Is there any interesting books you would recommend to us? Well, I think in Mark's version of this, he actually recommended a book by Tony Horwitz, which was the one I think about the journey of Captain Cook, I believe. And I haven't read that one yet, but one that I would like to recommend another Tony Horwitz book. And that's A Voyage Long and Strange, Rediscovering the New World. You can see I actually found this at Borders in a bargain bin, and autographed copy. And unfortunately, Tony Horwitz has passed away, tragically from a heart attack, too young. But he was undoubtedly one of my favorite authors, absolutely. And this was a great book. This was essentially him. I think in the beginning he talks about how he goes to Plymouth Rock, which is not an impressive sight, even though it's famous. And he thinks about it and he realizes, okay, that's the early 1600s, but Columbus arrived in the so-called New World, 1492. That's over 100 years in between. What happened during that time? And he realized he had no idea. He didn't know anything about that time period of our country's history. So he goes on a voyage long and strange to kind of figure out what was going on during that time period. What were the Spanish doing during that time period? And it's part history, part journalism, part travelogue, and just a terrific, as always, Tony Horwitz, a terrific book. So I highly recommend this one, A Voyage Long and Strange. Not far from Bilbao lies the town of Guernica, made famous by the atrocities committed there during the Spanish Civil War by the Luftwaffe in support of General Franco's fascists. These atrocities are commemorated in Pablo Picasso's painting, Guernica. Picasso is known for being an influential figure in both the Cubist and Surrealist movements. Are you a fan? Have you got a favorite artistic movement or school or movement? I wouldn't say I'm a huge fan of Picasso. I kind of like his illustrations more than his paintings. I went to the Picasso Museum when I was in Barcelona, and there I picked up, we got a little bowl with his illustration of Don Quixote, and I also got a magnet of his illustration of the Madman, which is like this crazy looking guy that's barefoot. So I'm drawn to his illustrations more than I am actually his paintings, although it was a great museum to go and visit. As far as artistic movements, you know, I don't know if I have an absolute favorite. I've always been drawn to like pre-Raphaelites and things that are connected to that. I like a lot of fantastical works. Yeah, it's... I'm drawing a blank on some of the other ones. I do like some other artistic moments, but I should have written down more notes on on this one. From Bilbao, you travel to Barcelona. In Barcelona, you visit Camp Nou, or Now. Again, Mark, you got to put like pronunciation things and some of these things in brackets. Home to the Barcelona football team, in many the national team of Catalonia. Are you a soccer fan? If not, what sports do you like? Do you ever go to matches, meets, events, etc.? I am actually a soccer fan. I mostly like to watch international soccer as far as countries competing with each other. That's my favorite thing to watch for soccer. I try to watch Premier League, but it's not playing in hours that are suitable for me in the US. It's always like in the morning when I'm working, and I never get to see those matches. I try to catch MLS matches when I can, but again, I'm not somebody who sits in front of a TV for a long time, so it's hard for me to sit down and watch, you know, for 2 hours to watch a soccer match. But if the US plays and my family and I are able to watch it, then that is usually an event that we will do. We will sit down and we will actually watch the game together as a family. Sometimes the U.S. soccer teams, both the men and women, will play friendly matches over in Hartford, Connecticut. We always get tickets for those, and we go and see those performances. And we always have a great time with that. We love the energy of the place. I don't watch a lot of other sports on television. You know, sometimes I do watch some MMA. But usually I end up watching highlights more than live matches. And the only other thing that I enjoy but I don't see very often anymore is I do like minor league baseball. I've never been much for the major league. I used to go to like Shea Stadium back when that was still there for the Mets, back when I was younger. But I like the atmosphere of minor league baseball. Not a bad seat in the house, it's cheap, and it feels more like baseball should feel to me. Unfortunately, the closest minor league teams to me have all disappeared, and I have to go more than an hour in any direction to see a minor league game where I'm located. So I don't see them as much as I'd like to, but I do miss them. You decide not to stay too long in Barcelona, instead move on back to France and up the Mediterranean coast to a nice town of Nice, passing through the town of Cannes on the way. Cannes, of course, is well known in the film industry and has one of the industry's most glamorous film festivals. What are a few of your favorite films? What was one of the most disappointing films you have seen? It's really hard for me to answer the favorite films thing. Like I am a big horror movie fan. I could probably give a whole list of that, but that'll probably end up being like a separate video at one point. You know, but there are certain films that my whole life I've gone back to and that I've loved. I'll just mention one, and that's Conan the Barbarian. I can't wait till my son's a little bit older and I can show him that. I love the music. I love the violence. I love everything about that film. But you know, that's certainly one of my favorites. As far as disappointing, I had some this year that I was disappointed by. Halloween Kills was really bad, a really bad film. And I liked Halloween 2018, so I was hoping that I would like where they were taking the story, and I just did not like it at all. It seemed like a mess of a film. And I had high hopes for Candyman as well, that remake. It seemed like they were going to take it in a really great direction, and I didn't really like how they handled that story, especially in the last act. So anyway, those are two most recent films that I saw that were disappointing to me. Heading further up the Mediterranean coast, we arrive in a new country, Italy, in the city of Genoa, where we will pause our journey for now. And if interest remains in this little tag, we'll pick up our trip in the former home of Christopher Columbus. Until then, arrivederci. Okay. So yes, he did make a part 3. I think he hasn't made a part 4 yet, but I will try to get to part 3 as soon as I can. So again, apologies for butchering some of the names. I just don't speak some of those languages. But anyway, again, thank you to Mark for making this tag. I think it's a great tag, and I look forward to doing the next one. And other than that, all right, thank you, BookTube.